I'm asking for question 8. What is the Socratic method of leadership and how can you apply it to the method towards today?
Okay, so what is the Socratic method of leadership and how can we apply it today? Well, the Socratic method is a term that we use for the way Socrates taught his disciples. He did not pontificate, he did not lecture, he did not dictate, he questioned. He used questions, he used indirect questioning, and he would challenge the mind of his student or disciple or interlocutor with the questions that he had asked. The Socratic method would be in a classroom, would be one in which the professor asks questions and discussions begin around those questions, which can create a kind of a group brainstorming, and that could well be applied in business circles. So instead of leadership taking the form of dictating to the subordinates in the room, one could present a problem for discussion to the group, and we could have a group discussion in which we're all contributing to the analysis of what we can we can do about this. Socrates was so adept at this type of questioning that we find in a fascinating example of him at work in the Platonic dialogue called the Meno. In that dialogue, they were discussing whether virtue can be taught. And there's one point in the discussion when Socrates calls in a slave boy. And the slave boy sits there, and of course it's understood that he's uneducated, you see. And Socrates draws a right triangle in the sand. And we actually have in the Platonic text the triangle that was drawn. You see a right triangle drawn there. And then Socrates starts asking the slave boy questions about the angles. Is this angle equal to that angle? Yes. Well then, is this side equal to that side? Yes, that side equal to that side since the angle. And then step by step he asked him until, although the boy was just answering the question, until he got the boy to derive a version of the Pythagorean theorem, from which Socrates had concluded, from which experience, that knowledge is in the soul already, that we have a priori knowledge, and that what happened there with the slave boy, as far as Socrates was concerned, was recollection. Anamnesis is the Greek word. Of course, this is based on the theory that the soul has total, absolute knowledge as a divine entity in and of itself, but when it enters the body, because of the flesh and the influence of the flesh, the soul forgets and has a hazy memory of its knowledge. So in effect, the important thing that one has to do is clean the windows of your soul. And you do that through the right kind of questioning, which forces the mind to expand step by step and recall this hidden, forgotten knowledge that was always there. This, of course, associates with the Pythagorean doctrine of the music of the spheres. It was thought that the body is the tomb of the soul, and Plato thought this too. The body is the tomb of the soul, and the soul, when it's separate from the body, is a divine entity, but when it's in the body, it is clogged up and blocked, and it has distorting elements, keeping it from getting clear understanding of the truth. And Shakespeare makes a reference to this in the Merchant of Venice, when Troilus says to Cressida, "There is a music of the spheres, but in this muddy vesture of decay, we cannot hear it, for we are too grossly constituted." In other words, the soul could hear the music of the spheres. It could hear the music that's made by the planets all moving in mathematical relationship to one another, which would form a musical interval or a musical chord or a cosmic music box. And we could hear all this, if the soul were not in the body. But in this muddy vesture of decay, vesture means clothing, in this muddy clothing of decay, the flesh, you see, we cannot hear it, for we are too grossly constituted. We're too grossly made up. And we need this ethereal freedom to have the soul experience directly the eternal verities and the eternal ideas. So the way this is done is through questioning, see, through the dialectical method, the Socratic method, and this is what should be used as a leadership model in business. Thank you.